IVM.
Hi, welcome to a show about crypto. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about the philosophy of blockchain with Jaspreet Bindra, who I want to talk to because I came across your TEDx talk at TEDx Chennai. We're talking about the blockchain, and I read a bunch of articles. And what I'm really fascinated by is this idea that you have about the philosophy of the blockchain. So I want to jump right into it. You call the blockchain something that's inherently a little more socialist than the current economy. And I'm very curious to hear why it is that you think that.
Okay, thanks, Rohan. I was thrilled when you and your guys came to me and said that you want to talk about the philosophy of blockchain, because very frankly, that is perhaps the most fascinating thing about the technology. While everyone seems to be, hot and bothered about the technology and crypto and NFTs and metaverse, which are all great use cases, but it's really the philosophy which is just completely fascinating and makes me fall in love with the technology, actually. Blockchain inherently is a decentralizer. So wherever you want to take something which is centralized and decentralize it or distribute it, the technology that you use is blockchain. So
Sure.
We know the case of money. Money inherently is a centralized property, right? It's controlled by a government or a central bank. And what is crypto? Crypto actually is decentralized money. And this philosophy actually goes beyond to every asset. The same thing can happen for land, same thing can happen for identity. Just the fact that there are a bunch of servers and a bunch of people actually authenticating stuff rather than one person. So not one central authority, but multiple of them basically means it's decentralized. Now, why socialist is interesting. Okay. And because it's a decentralizer, it's also called a democratizing technology. So rather than a dictatorial one, it's far more democratized. And the socialist bit, I wasn't the first one to think that way. Naval Ravikant, who's like the tech philosopher, actually said that blockchain could be a killer app of socialism. Okay. And the reason is very simple. And if you bear with me for 30 seconds, the World Wide Web is actually made on a very thin protocol called the TCP/IP protocol, which is free. Okay. But all it does is just routes packets from one place to another.
Correct.
So it has no value. The value is in the apps above that. Thick apps, Facebook app, right. Google app, Amazon app. And so all the value is captured by the apps, not by the protocol. And so the apps become trillion-dollar apps. And we get these massive capitalist trillionaires sitting on a free protocol. Blockchain is the reverse. It's a thick protocol and thin apps. Okay, so the protocol itself, the blockchain itself contains so much stuff: trust, authenticity, provenance, smart contracts. And so the apps that you need to make on it are thin. And the protocol is, again, belongs to everyone. And the value is in the protocol. And so what else of value belongs to everyone. And so rather than belonging to a few very rich capitalists, it belongs to the population. Sure. And that's why the socialism part. And that's why I call it socialist.
So here's where I am on that, right? In the sense that I get what you're saying. I hear you. Yeah. I fundamentally, on some level, there is this sort of romantic idealism that sort of seems to take hold of people when they discuss crypto and they discuss the socialist and the decentralized implications of it. And this is for everybody. But this is now, we've been doing this podcast for 6 months. I myself have been following the space for, about 18 months. And what frustrates me, for want of a better word, is this. Here you are talking about the inherently socialist implications of blockchain. And yet, every single person that I sort of see working on it right now is approaching it from an inherently capitalistic perspective, right? Like today, the conversation is not about the blockchain as much as it is about cryptocurrency. And while we can talk about a cryptocurrency being decentralized and being all of those things, the simple fact is that so far they're being looked at more as tradable assets than as actual tender. I feel like everybody who's into it seems to have very capitalistic ideas of the profits, etc., that they want to make from it. So how does the applications that we're seeing today, do you feel like that conflicts with this larger socialist ideal that you're talking about?
So look, at one level, you're right, Rohan. But on the other level, actually, the things happening are are not necessarily the way you're thinking, okay, or all of us are thinking. So at one level, you're right. I mean, I too get frustrated by this, that all of blockchain and everything around blockchain until fairly recently has just been put in this one word, crypto, and the trading of crypto and making money out of crypto, doubling your money, etc., etc. But actually, and for many times, and crypto, and it's not surprising because crypto is really has been so far the only scale application of blockchain for consumers. Okay, enterprise blockchain, there's stuff happening, but consumer blockchain, that's the only scale application. There's been nothing else. And so, I've been fond of saying that blockchain has been a hammer looking around for a nail. Okay, but what has happened is now the nails are emerging. More nails are emerging. Okay, and so this whole Web 3.0 stuff, which we can talk about later, or the NFTs, or distributed finance, DeFi, all powered by blockchain, are actually now and so some of that, what you said, just trading crypto, is changing. Now, so there where you're right. Now, where, I have a slightly different view is, look, capitalism, so socialism doesn't say that you don't make profit. The basic thing is that, look, in capitalism, it's very centralized. Few people get rich at the expense of others, or this version of capitalism. So when I say socialist, I mean that the wealth gets distributed. Okay, so say in a venture capital world, okay, if there were only a very few people who were kind of had the money and were making more and more money out of it, at least what the whole cryptocurrency thing and now the newer things coming in is that it gives democratic access. Anyone can go do it. You don't need to be like this super rich guy. Okay. Millions of people can go do it and are doing it. So it's kind of making that access easier. It's democratizing access to potential wealth. And that equalization is where I come to when I say that it's kind of anti-hardcore capitalist.
All right, we're in conversation with Jaspreet Bindra about the philosophy of the blockchain, and I have many, many questions still to ask, but that would be on the other side of this short break.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Tugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IBM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
And we're back from our short break where we're in conversation with Jaspreet Bindra about the philosophy of the blockchain. So again, right, and I'm sorry if I'm going to come across as just a bit of a pessimist. Not that, it's just that since we're discussing the philosophy of it, this is actually a very rare occasion I get to ask these questions because a lot of times we're discussing this thing from a very financial perspective. So you mentioned democratization, you mentioned equalization. But the fact remains that today, if you want to say mine cryptocurrency or if you want to be a node on the blockchain, there is still a certain barrier to entry in terms of you're looking at expensive either GPUs or computing power. You're looking at things like that. So yes, I agree. It's not just in the hands of 6 venture capitalists anymore. But even this democratization we talk about, aren't we still talking about it within a certain privileged perspective for people who have a certain kind of access all the same? Like, my only worry is it truly democratic or is it still that weirdly 1% democratic, right? Is where as horrible as that, because I feel like democratic is a word that gets thrown around a lot by privileged people, right? When you're really just talking about the same 1% is due. So that's my worry here. Am I 100% wrong in just being like an uber pessimist for no reason?
No. You're not 100% wrong, but you're not 1% right either. Okay, so it's kind of somewhere in between. Okay, so if you talk of the large blockchains, the Bitcoin or Ethereum or some of those, sure, what you say is right. Okay, where you need to have a certain level of capital and computing to buy the computing power, set up those massive specialized servers and etc. to mine. Okay, but mining Bitcoin or mining Ethereum is so yesterday in that sense. I mean, that was the way to make money at a point of time. Still, if you have that capital, sure, you can make money. But as you know now, it's become more and more difficult. And in fact, more and more money is needed, computing power is needed. That's not the thing. The thing is that there are 3,000 other altcoins beyond these two, okay, or maybe 5,000 others, okay, and there you don't need all this money to get in, or even to mine, or to buy, or to sell. They are but I think crypto is not really the only democratizing factor. When I say democratizing, let me give you two points here. So one is this whole Web 3.0 stuff, which blockchain is powering. And as you know, all the big guys also are kind of moving towards that. And what is Web 3.0? At its basic stuff, it basically means that the web is owned by everyone rather than being owned by just very few big tech players. Okay. And so and the whole deal about it is rewarding the creators, the people who create the web. So if today you put up video, we are recording this, and suppose we put this up in Facebook or we put this up in Twitter, the people who are going to make money out of it are Facebook and Twitter.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. That's Web 2.0, right? They're going to make money out of it. You and I have spent our time, have had interesting conversations, and we believe that it's been worth it. Fine. In Web 3, the whole change is that the creator gets rewarded. Okay, and so there's a bunch of Web3, very interesting Web3 sites, for example. There's something called Go Social, which is Indian. There's Steam. There are bunches of them. And so there, the creator always gets a larger portion of the money than the platform gets. Okay. And this new set of platforms is what is making Web3. Whether you take Substack, for example, or you take OnlyFans, for example, okay, and you take Medium, for example, and then all these new ones for photography, for comedy, for writing, and the same thing, and I'm moving to number 2 here, is actually what is this whole NFT thing.
Right.
Now, whatever else we think about NFT, the one approach to think about it is people who are creating stuff now have a newer, much more accessible way to make money out of it. And the interesting thing about NFT, so I create something and you buy it for $10 from me, okay, and I get, say, $8. Tomorrow, when you sell it to someone else, you sell it to your friend, I still get $2 or $3 out of that sale. So as a creator, every transaction I get, and so it's actually empowering creators. And that's where the democratization is coming from. The long tail finally has a way, other than just advertising, which is controlled by the big guys, to actually monetize itself.
So that sounds great to me, right? Like the idea, especially as a creator, there's nothing more thrilling than that to me. But here's a question, just looking at the way Web 2.0 went, right? Like this is something that started with a ton of promise and a ton of potential. And again, I feel like this conversation has happened in different iterations before, right? Here is this new technology and it is going to bring us closer together and it's going to make us one and it's going to do that. And then, like you said, we saw this thin protocol, then essentially capitalized on by these thick apps, and they went away, right? And now today, yes, you're telling me blockchain is more decentralized, it's all of those things, but we are already seeing big players enter. Like today, at the end of the day, you can say a process is democratized, but if, like, with the greatest of respect to him, a Mark Zuckerberg and a Meta are going to get into the game way before I do, how do we ensure that 3 years from now, we're not just all in another one? And this is to completely steal a line from an episode of Succession. How do we make sure we're not just in the Web 3.0 version of Mark Zuckerberg digital gulag 3 years from now, as opposed to being in this totally democratic place? It's my question.
What you're saying is a real possibility and a real threat. Okay. And I'm absolutely with you. When the web was formed, the 2.0, the one which we know, the World Wide Web as we call it, okay, I mean, it was started by idealists.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of those are alive today. And, it was started and, there were those books which was about, how the long tail, as I've said it again, how it will make money, how it will be a great democratizer, how it will give equal access to everyone, etc., etc., etc. Where the problem happened, Rohan, in my view, is that while the web still is inherently democratic, the business models on top of it are inherently capitalistic. Right. So people had to make money out of it, right? You couldn't make money only by selling porn, which was the first real business model of the web. Okay, but you had to make...
Oldest profession in the world, right?
and always succeeds in every medium, right? So OnlyFans now. Okay, so anyways, and so the business model was the problem, and the business model that basically started powering the web and powers the web today is basically advertiser pays, right? Or the selling of data in a sense, and the business. And actually, it's very weird. You've seen the 404 error in the web.
Yeah.
Okay, there's something called a 402 error which you wouldn't know of. 402 was because the original web was created to enable payments, micro payments, so that every time you consume something, see something, you pay for it. That was never used. 402 error, never used, and the advertiser pays business model came in. Okay, and the business model basically centralized everything. Okay, it kind of created this flywheel. The only hope today is that the business model of Web3 is different.
Right.
Okay, it's actually not advertiser pays. Okay, it is actually about whoever consumes pays. So very small micro payments, but so it's a freemium kind of model. Some things are free, and then for other stuff you need to pay. So if you buy an NFT, you need to pay. OnlyFans, you need to whatever. Substack, you need to pay to kind of read stuff. Okay, and things like that. So that's one hope. However, because the business model is different, and the business model is essentially a micropayment model, and a lot of those micropayments are actually enabled through crypto.
Right.
Okay, these are crypto micropayments. Okay.
Right.
But having said that, yes, there is a real fear. If we use the much used word metaverse, rather than one metaverse, there will be like Facebook's metaverse, and there would be like someone else's metaverse, and someone else's
It's just more walled gardens, right? It's just more walled gardens and all over again.
Exactly. So a bunch of walled gardens, okay, rather than one single one. That fear, absolutely, and it's possible, but hopefully the only thing too, one is business model, two, we are also in the middle of a massive tech clash. Okay, customers are rebelling against this control. And hopefully the sum of those two things doesn't take us along the same rabbit hole as it did earlier.
Fingers crossed about that. One thing that I'd like to ask you about is you mentioned that blockchain is like a hammer in search of some nails.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what some of those nails could be? Like one of the things that I saw, in fact, under your article on LinkedIn was this discussion of what if the government started putting all details of how tax money is spent on the blockchain. And to me, that sounds fascinating because I'm like, now you have like untamperable evidence of where your tax money is going. So like that, what are other nails you think?
Oh, there are a lot of nails. Okay, so let's put it this way. There are nails in the consumer world, nails in the enterprise world, nails in the government world. Okay,
right.
The consumer world, we talked about a few. So the whole NFT powering, Web 3.0 powering, all of that is actually obviously crypto. All of those are actually the blockchain, the creator economy, etc., etc. Enterprise, boring stuff, but very effective stuff. Okay, in remittances of money, it's much faster, cheaper. Things like invoice discounting, things like supply chain, especially now with supply chains being broken. Okay, if you build supply chains on a blockchain network, it's so much faster, easier to kind of figure out where this mango came from, etc., or blood diamonds, or now what is called dirty rare earths like cobalt, etc. So that they're clean, the people are so. There's a lot of enterprise stuff. Okay, what you specifically refer to is government stuff, and I believe that actually the maximum. The biggest nail or the maximum power of blockchains can actually be realized by governments, though many governments inherently are disincentivized to do it. Okay, because blockchain promotes transparency. Okay, blockchain can eliminate corruption. Okay, it can eliminate a lot of red tape. Okay, and therefore there's a huge
and all of those sound like political nightmares, like in the sense like the idealism of the platform when it crashes up against the political reality of, because like you get the sense that, well, if not governments as entities, at least the people who run them like dealing in the dark, as horrible as that sounds.
So that's what I said, that they have a massive disincentive, okay, to actually clean stuff up. But if they want to, the use case you mentioned, or the couple more, 2-3 more, education, for example, blockchain degrees. Okay, and which will make education loans much cheaper, because most of the times education loans are fraudulent, and so the interest rates are very high, and therefore vicious cycle. People who really need the loans don't get them.
True.
Okay, so blockchain degrees, blockchain-based land records, which people can't hack into and deprive poor farmers, etc., etc. And more importantly, farmers can get loans against it. Okay, which they don't get
Right.
today. Okay, but other interesting cases, tax records that you said, basically it's a trust problem. You have a PAN card, DIN card, MIN card, TIN card, but while that department therefore trusts you because you have the card, the department issuing card A doesn't trust department issuing card B. And so,
Sure.
kind of putting it on one trustless network, as it's called, identity, centralized identity, including our own Aadhaar and many others, are inherently super hackable and inherently super, and they can be abused by governments. But if, for the sake of argument, your Aadhaar's nodes were the government, the Supreme Court, the Election Commission, something else, it automatically becomes that much more less prone to hacking as well as to misuse. I want to end with giving you a quick example. There's a tiny country called Estonia, which you might have heard of, which actually has put everything on the blockchain. Health records,
right.
Tax records, health records, financial records, identity, voting, everything. And basically, it takes 3 minutes to open a company there because everything is kind of available.
Oh, wow.
All voting is 100% hack-proof and happens from home. Okay, you don't go anywhere. They have actually put the entire country on a blockchain, and no hacking happens. They've got very powerful neighbors who are looking to hack their systems, and it doesn't happen. And actually, Estonia is now marketing itself as country as a service, rather than software as a service, etc. So, a bunch of possibilities.
But I mean, sir, like, ye India, we'll figure out how to hack it. Give us a week. We'll figure it out. My final question is this, and this is the one that keeps me up at night a little bit, and it comes down to this: we have these amazing decentralized protocols. We have all of these amazing things. We have talk of DeFi, and we have talk of DAOs, and we have all of those things. But fundamentally, my worry is this: that when things are good, everybody's okay with this. When things are bad, suddenly people, more than dealing with it themselves, also want to have either a regulator or a central authority who can crack the whip on their behalf. So, in a way, as horrible as this sounds, is Loki from the Avengers correct? Were we meant to be ruled? Do we like to be ruled? And how does that conflict with something as fundamentally democratic and flat as the blockchain?
That's like a meta-philosophical question. Okay, super philosophical. Okay.
I'm sorry, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night.
No. Look, there is some truth in Loki's statement. Okay. I think the utopian dream of every person on their own, every person having their own personalized currency, forget government currency or cryptocurrency. I mean, most of the idealists are dreaming of a Rohan currency and a Jaspreet currency, etc., etc. Okay.
Yeah.
So the ultimate decentralization, I think, with 8 billion plus people, is not really a credible alternative. Okay. I actually, funnily, I'm a votary for some regulation in some of these technologies. I agree with it. Okay, it's kind of counter to everything that we've spoken about. But I want to throw, if I asked you, Ron, that there was this technology in the last century, which came up in the middle of the century, which was super powerful, mega powerful, and had its good sides, which could save the earth, and bad side, which would completely destroy the earth. It was invented somewhere around the 1940s. Okay, and the answer is nuclear energy. Okay, it's the most amazing source of energy, which can actually theoretically solve all our energy problems.
True.
It's both fission and fusion. Okay,
can
solve our. On the other hand, with Hiroshima and everything, but the destructive effect of this technology was so crazy, and it was demonstrated at Hiroshima. Okay, that all the governments got together, buried their differences, massive post-World War differences, okay, and kind of created a regulatory framework which at least till well, this particular 12:40 on a Tuesday or whatever has not resulted in another nuclear.
So far, so good.
Yeah, so far, so good. I believe that in some of these technologies, we are reaching the Hiroshima moment.
Right.
Okay. And especially in things like what is happening with some of the social networks and therefore AI and, some of these. And I think there will be this coalition coming together to do some kind of a regulation, which I think is necessary because the destructive ability of these technologies are as much as, and it's democratic control of destruction. Okay.
This is true. This is true.
Not a centralized control. And so therefore I think it's needed. And therefore, to answer your question, I think certain level of rule is necessary. And yes, therefore people prefer to be ruled when such forces are kind of going around.
Well, let's just hope that in this case, we get to that coalition before the Hiroshima moment and not after the fact, even though human history has sadly taught us that it will always be after the fact.
Absolutely. And I think, yes, that is what keeps me awake at night. That, we do this proactively rather than reactively, though, as you rightly said, all precedence shows that we do this reactively rather than proactively.
Well, I mean, now you know that if you are awake at night, think about this. Give me a call. We just record another episode. But on that note, thank you so much, Jaspreet. This has been a very illuminating conversation. I think this is one of those conversations where anybody who listens to this episode will go back with as many questions as they have answers. And I think that's great because I also think we've reached this place where more than just sort of following it, looking into it, people need to start thinking critically about the blockchain and about crypto, because I feel like we've kind of lived 2 years of euphoria.
Yeah.
And I think the time for critical thinking and reasoning is here if it's to make the next step forward. So thank you so much for putting us on that path today on this show. This has been a great conversation. This has been a show about crypto, and we have been in conversation with Jaspreet Bindra about the philosophy of blockchain. And on that note, thank you, Jaspreet. It is time to leave the matrix.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun Dugirala talks to Divyanshu Damani, co-founder and CEO at Tag Mango. The two discuss how content creators can monetize their content, going beyond the traditional ads and brand deals. On The Habit Coach, Ashton is in conversation with Ashna Modi, clinical psychologist at ASA Wellness. They discuss the habit of deservability and gratitude. On Probation Se Promotion Tak, host Abhinav talks about business networking and teaches us how to enhance those networking skills. On The Longest Constitution, Priya gives us a peek into the history of caste-based discrimination and how our constitution is committed to overcoming that. And on The Musafir Stories, the hosts are joined by author and poet Mihir Vatsa. They discover the plateau town of Hazaribagh. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And also do check out our YouTube channels. We have a number of them. You can get them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And remember, if you're enjoying this show, or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really does help us spread the word. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Eventually, you'll see the end of your childhood.
Get accustomed to womanhood.
Enjoy the experience of sisterhood.
Might get to wifehood.
Or not. Choose motherhood.
Or not. You'll learn to define your personhood.
Earn a livelihood.
Change the neighborhood.
And get rid of the falsehood that life post-academia is easy.
So join me, Natasha.
And me, Ayushi.
On a journey from station starting point.
To station, what now?
Next station, Pudin Station. And hopefully, Agla Station, adulthood.
Fresh episodes out every Thursday.